Shabbat Shalom. So as difficult as it may be, let me just ask you and see how the world's memory works. Where were you 19 years ago on this day? Everyone knows the date, yes? Yes, it's September 11th. Not at this particular time, but when you received the news, do you remember where you were? Everybody, quite exactly, I'm sure. I know for myself, I was on the West Coast in Los Angeles, so I woke up with things already happening, but I didn't know that because I stumbled out of bed at that time. I was heading down to the Midian for rabbinic school, and as I left my apartment, the neighbor across the way opened her door and said, "Have you seen the news?" I was oblivious. I was half unconscious. I was just waking up. Of course, I had seen no news. I went into her apartment. She showed me what was happening on the TV. Went back into my own, turned on the TV, woke my wife, and we watched as the towers came down. But more than just that day, do you remember how you felt on the 12th? Do you remember how you felt on the next day? There was a wave of emotion that swept across this nation, that united us in a way that I, in my short existence up to that point, had never seen. There was a sudden reawakening of the idea that we are all Americans, which is exactly what the terrorists already knew. I don't give them any special wisdom or insight. They were loads of people and acted as fools. But they saw something in us that we had forgotten at that point, and I dare say we have forgotten in the years since. When they were flying the planes to attack and kill those of us in this country, they were not aiming for white Americans or black Americans or Muslim Americans or Christian or Jewish, the rich or the poor. They just wanted to kill Americans. And a building full of people who were American, that was good enough for them. That was a suitable target because to them, we were all the same. To them, we were all interchangeable as targets. While I do not believe that that is anything like a valid target, the reminder that we are all united as Americans is something that we desperately need to keep in our hearts day in and day out. You see, the problem is, when you only focus on your internal community, you tend to focus on what separates you from the other members of that shared community. After all, if we are all the same and all interchangeable within these four walls, then where is my identity? Where is my distinctiveness? And so it can be very hard for a person to primarily think of themselves as part of a larger group. And we have a tendency to focus on the subset that we feel most closely a part of within that larger group. And this happens in the Jewish world as well, although to a slightly lesser degree, primarily because our enemies have never let us forget that in their eyes, we are all just Jews. And that has helped remind us, even when otherwise we would have broken into divisions and fought amongst each other even more than we do. But think for a moment about what has happened in the years since, over the last 19 years. Think of how much we have lost that feeling of unity that we had on the 12th of September. Think how much we have tended to focus on those things which we see as being fractures and points of division, points that are worthy of discussion, but points nonetheless that many people treat as though putting us on opposing teams. If we have a disagreement, it is not a disagreement about how to move our country forward, but instead many conceive it as being me versus them. That whatever team I am on within this great country must stand in opposition to the team the other is on within this great country. And that any gain they have is necessarily a loss to my team. as though we are somehow battling it out on a giant football field. This is not what the terrorists saw when they attacked us. This is not what we saw in the days after the attack of 9/11. And yet it has become too easy to paint those on our opposing teams, however we divide it, whether it be by political party, whether it be by economic status, whether it be by racial divisions, whether by religious divisions, that for anyone to gain, the other must lose. This is not as it must be. And this is not the truth of our country. This is not the truth that Judaism teaches. For we all come from a shared source. We all come from a shared origin, and our destiny is bound one to another. And we may and should argue and even fight vehemently for issues that we believe are important and about which we have differing opinions. But we fight as allies, choosing the best strategy to overcome the common foes of hatred, of poverty, of inequality. We fight to overcome those. And even if our strategies differ, and even if our objectives may feel to be slightly different from one another, we must recognize that we are tackling this as a group that must feel united. Think, if you will, if you ever wonder whether or not we are truly one nation, and whether or not we truly must look upon each other as brothers and sisters within this great nation. Think for a moment about those first responders who on 9/11 raced towards the crash sites and the fires and the smoke. When they went into those buildings, did they sort the victims by race? Did they sort the victims by economic standing? Did they sort the victims by religion? Did they sort the victims in any way other than by what do they need? This is a person who needs to be treated now. This is a person whose treatment can wait an hour. This is a person who can wait even longer. The triage of treatment, yes. But distinguishing one American from another as being deserving of their care? Of course, anyone who has ever trained to help someone in such a situation knows you help all, and you help all to the best of your ability. This is the essence of what our country is meant to stand for. This is the essence that has been exemplified by the first responders on 9/11. And it is the thing that we must continue to hold on to. And we as Jews must play our part in ensuring that even as we defend our Jewish identity and the Jewish unique perspective on life, that we still see ourselves bound completely to the fortune of this country and to all the members of it, and to never look upon another member of this country as though they are the enemy. There are enemies enough in the world. We do not need to make them within our own borders. Shabbat Shalom.